Let's talk about one of the most incredible economic transformations of the last century. We're diving into how Malaysia, a nation once known mostly for tin and rubber, completely reinvented itself to become a critical player in the global tech supply chain. It's a story of ambition, strategy, and a masterclass in how to build a modern economy. So, how on earth did they pull it off? How do you go from basic commodities to a global manufacturing powerhouse? Well, the answer really boils down to four huge strategic pivots over several decades. We're going to walk through each one of these shifts to see exactly how Malaysia made the leap. It's an amazing story of vision and, more importantly, execution.
All right, so to really get how big of a deal this transformation was, we've got to rewind the clock. Let's go back to the beginning, right around the time of independence, when the economic picture looked, well, completely different.
I want you to just picture an economy that was almost entirely dependent on two things: digging tin out of the ground and tapping rubber from trees. Manufacturing was a tiny, tiny part of the picture. We're talking just a measly 8% of the national income. And even that was mostly just basic processing, like melting down tin ore, pretty much all controlled by foreign companies. There was no grand industrial vision yet. Okay, so here they are. These are the four big strategic shifts that really define Malaysia's industrial story. Each one of these represents a deliberate choice, a conscious decision to change course, adapt to the times, and aim for something much, much bigger. Let's break them down one by one. So, first things first. After independence in 1957, the brand new government knew that the old colonial model of just exporting raw materials wasn't going to cut it for the long term. The very first strategic move was to look inward and start building an industrial base from the ground up. The idea here was actually pretty simple, right? Instead of spending valuable money importing everyday things like soap or shoes or clothes, the thinking was, why don't we just make them ourselves? This whole policy, called import substitution, was about serving Malaysia's own market first and foremost and keeping that money circulating inside the country. Now, this was a necessary first step, for sure. But, it had its limits. The domestic market was just too small to really drive massive growth. And without the pressure of global competition, a lot of the new local companies, frankly, weren't very efficient. It became pretty clear that for Malaysia to really take off, it had to look beyond its own shores. So by the end of the 1960s, there was this big realization. The real game wasn't just about making things for Malaysians. The real prize, the entire world. And this next pivot, this decision to open up the economy, well, it changed absolutely everything. The government didn't just sit back and hope foreign companies would show up. Oh no, they engineered it. They rolled out this whole toolbox of incentives: tax breaks, new laws, building out industrial parks, pouring money into power and telecommunications. The message to the world was loud and clear: come here, build your factories, we are open for business, and we will help you succeed. And the crown jewel of this whole strategy was these free trade zones, or zone perdagangan bebas. You can think of them like these special economic bubbles. Companies could import all their raw materials and components with basically no taxes, assemble their products, and then ship the finished goods out to the rest of the world, again with minimal hassle. They were basically magnets pulling in the world's biggest tech companies. Now get this, back in 1970, before this new export strategy really kicked into high gear, electronics made up just 3% of Malaysia's manufactured exports. 3%, that's it, a tiny fraction. And then you fast forward just 2 decades. What happens? That number skyrocketed. I mean, it absolutely exploded to over 65%. This wasn't just a little bit of growth. This was a complete economic revolution. It was undeniable proof that opening up to the world was a massive, massive success. I mean, this table tells the whole story, doesn't it? Just look at the numbers. You can literally see the machinery and electrical category just take off like a rocket, while the old traditional industries kind of fade into the background. Malaysia had officially found its new economic engine. So, the export engine is firing on all cylinders by the 1980s, right? But Malaysia wasn't about to just rest on its laurels. The next big, audacious goal was to move beyond just assembling products for foreign companies and start building its own heavy industries from scratch. And this quote really gets to the heart of the thinking at the time. Building things like steel mills or car factories, that takes a huge amount of money and a very long-term vision. It was just too big and too risky for the local private companies to handle back then. So the government decided it had to step in and lead the charge. And what did they do? They created HICOM. You can think of HICOM as the government's muscle, its big project division. Its whole job was to kickstart these massive foundational industries that would support the entire economy and build up Malaysia's own tech capabilities. And HICOM got to work on some truly landmark projects. Of course, there's Proton, the famous national car. But it also built out these crucial industries in steel, cement, and manufacturing for the oil and gas sector. These were more than just companies. They were symbols, right? A powerful statement that Malaysia was serious about building a real industrial backbone. And to make sure all this energy and investment was pointed in the right direction, they launched the very first Industrial Master Plan, or Plan Induk Perindustrian, in 1986. This was the official roadmap, the blueprint for the future, laying out a detailed, long-term vision for becoming a fully developed industrial nation. Okay, but here's the thing. All of that was then, and that incredible playbook that brought so much success, it was written for a different time. Today, the global economy is a different beast, and Malaysia knows it has to adapt all over again. And this is what that new reality looks like. It's not about cheap labor anymore. Now the challenges are things like a shortage of really high-skilled talent, not enough homegrown innovation and R&D, and even the risk of the industrial sector shrinking too soon. The bottom line is, the old strategy of being the world's assembly line, well, it's just not going to be enough to win in the future. So what's the next move? Well, this is the proposed blueprint for the future. It's all about making a big shift from quantity to quality. It means changing the incentives to attract high-tech, high-value projects. It means totally re-engineering the education and training systems to produce the right kinds of skills. And it means creating these new, integrated hubs where companies and research labs can work together. It's about moving from just making things to creating things, from imitation to pure innovation. When you step back and look at it, the journey from colonial-era tin mines to modern semiconductor cleanrooms is just, wow, it's absolutely remarkable. Malaysia literally wrote and executed one of the most successful industrialization playbooks the world has ever seen. But now, as the world keeps changing, a new chapter needs to be written. And that leaves us with the big, fascinating question, what's next?